lovely evening and welcome. Just to say a few administrative things, like many of you will have been here before, you know where the toilets are, but basically go out and find the stair opposite the main door and head down and follow the signs and you will find them. There is some, Ian here is taking video of the conversation this evening, but it will be backs of heads. So if anyone really doesn't want even the back of their head taken, then maybe sit in a discreet corner somewhere. But he's really, as you can see, they're set up and it's the speakers that he's focusing on. So I'm going to hand over to our guests this evening. Rose, who's not really a guest, she's resident in Kirkcudbright, and many of you will know her very well. And she's going to lead the discussion today with Maureen, who's come all the way from London, just arrived about 2 hours ago. So welcome to you both, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Pam. Welcome to you all. Welcome to Broughton House. I'm Rose Petal Hall, and this evening we're going to be exploring a topic that has touched most of us, overthinking. And many of us know what that feels like, whether we've got conversations replaying in our head, worries about making decisions, or imagining worst case scenarios. Some of us experience senses of hopelessness or anxiety, and worried about the future, what that might hold. And definitely not being able to switch off at the end of the day. But is overthinking simply a habit? Or is it something that we can change? Or could it be an invitation to reconnect something deep within us? I'm delighted to be joined this evening with Maureen Goodman, Programme Director of Broughton House UK. Maureen, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, for inviting me.
I'm just wondering if you could say a few words to introduce yourself. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, yes, I play a role in the organisation of the Brahman Kumaris, and this is a spiritual university, actually. Began in India now 90 years ago, and we have now centres all over the world in about 120 countries. But it's really about bringing some of these practices of spirituality, of self-understanding, of good relations, spiritual values into our lives. And so that includes, of course, understanding the mind and how it works. And so, yes, I've been involved with the organisation actually for 50 years. And I think, well, it's 50 years, quite.
You told them old enough.
It's actually my second time here, I think. And the first time I came in this room, I was just overwhelmed. And I feel a bit like that now. It's a bit hot. Thank you.
It certainly is beautiful here. We just wanted to really start off with some practices, a practice that we can use, because I feel that today is really this evening is about some practical skills that we can learn and share. And just to sort of set the tone for the evening, I think, Maureen, we thought we'd just start with a few moments silence.
Moments of silence, so going within. So sit comfortably with your feet on the floor and just watch your thoughts for a few moments. And then ask yourself, Who is the master? Are my thoughts the master of me? Or am I the master of my thoughts? Do I follow the thoughts that lead me to peacelessness? Or can I consciously direct my thoughts to peace? And that is the peace within. The peace that we all have inside. But perhaps we allow it to get buried by other influences. So in this moment of silence, just have the thought, I am peace. Thank you.
Well done, everybody. Maureen, I really would like to start with just asking you to sort of, for you, what does it mean, overthinking, as a shared human experience? You know, what does it mean to you, and why do we overthink? And why do so many people feel overloaded either thoughts? And is overthinking different from reflection?
Yes, it's different from reflection, I'm saying that. A different kind of reflection. But what is overthinking? Our thoughts are very important because our thoughts are actually our energy. And if you think about it, if your thoughts are very rapid, then, and maybe stressful, then generally your breathing will be a bit more shallow. And then what about your energy? You will literally have less energy because there's a deep connection between our thoughts and our breath and our energy. And then conversely, if my thoughts are calm, peaceful, filled with good feelings, then my breathing is slower, deeper, and I have more energy. And then I can use my time in a much better way. I think we all know how, if I'm really worried about something, then I have a task to do. And if I'm very worried, the task that should take me 10 minutes will take me an hour. And so being able to understand our thoughts is very important. And I think why we have overthinking, it's because we allow the external to dictate our thinking to us. So for example, I look at all of you, okay? Now I could be, if I want you to control me, I'd be thinking, what am I thinking? Am I saying the right thing? Isn't it okay? Then you would be putting thoughts in my mind, right? Because of what I see. You see someone, you start to think in a certain way. You hear something, you start to think in a certain way. So the external often dictates our thinking. And then of course we get very confused at times because who do I please? Because often when we're thinking about other people, we're thinking that we want to please them. but what pleases this person may not please that person, and so on and so forth. So the number of our thoughts increases. And I discovered a while ago that if I keep thinking a lot about somebody or something, it means I want to control them. Because if you do something good, I'll think how nice it is and then I'll move on. But if you've hurt me, you won't move on from those thoughts, will you? You'll be thinking, they shouldn't have done this, why did they do that? You want them to behave differently. You want to control them, or I want to control that person. And so this is another aspect of overthinking. And I didn't see it in that way before, but when I realised it, I thought, that's really interesting. So why am I trying to change somebody? Have you ever tried to change someone? Does it work? But we still think they should be like this, they should be like this. So you can begin to see how the impact of the people around me and the circumstances around me really begin to dictate my thinking, and that's really where overthinking comes from. So that's one part of it.
Thank you. Yes, I hadn't thought of it quite like that, and that's quite a revelation. Thank you so much. I want to ask as well, why is our overthinking happen more in the evening at night time, or were we trying to sleep?
Yeah, that's very true. But that I experienced that too. That you start to think different thoughts. Sometimes I know when I'm going to sleep. I have some meditation, then I want to go to sleep, and then my to-do list comes in my head. Has that happened to you? Oh, I didn't do that. So actually, just going practically, I keep a piece of paper and a pen down my bed so that I just note it, then I can forget it. You need practical ways. Instead of saying, I should be thinking this, oh, just write it down, finish it, that's it. Then in the morning, you know what we had to do. And I do that when I'm packing, There's always a few things you forget, so I'll make a note, so I won't forget it. But I think what happens is that when we're going through life and we're going through the day, we're very distracted by what we're doing, what's going on. And then at night, you're putting the distractions to one side. And so then things that you haven't allowed to surface during the day then tend to come up. And it's interesting because sometimes, even if something's happened that's not been pleasant, I've sort of put it to one side, but that can come back at night because I'm not being distracted by anything else. And so the practice of meditation and calming myself and my thoughts before sleeping is very, very important. But what I like to ask myself questions. And if something comes up in my mind that I feel I haven't done right, or somebody said something to me that I don't feel so good about, and it happened to me a couple of days ago. Somebody reported what somebody was thinking. I thought, dear. And then the question I always like to ask myself is, what is there to learn in this situation? And then once, and I did this just the other day, once I pinpointed what I had to learn, then I could stop thinking about it. And I actually used that situation to empower me to do something better. So you need to be very clever with yourself and know how to ask yourself certain questions. Or, for example, when you keep thinking about a person or a situation, you can say to yourself, or ask the question, well, who's more powerful, this person or me? Who's in charge of my thoughts? this person or me? And then you begin to think, I should have a bit more self-dignity than that. And I should begin to choose my thinking. And sometimes you don't realise you can choose your thinking, but you can. I remember being in a dialogue and with some leaders, and then we got into small groups, and I forget the topic, but I said something like, you can choose your thoughts and your feelings, because thoughts and feelings are closely connected back. And there was one businessman in the group, he was so shocked. Can you? No, you can't. Because he just allowed everything to overtake him. You can, you really can. And that's self-empowerment.
It certainly is, and I love that, having a notebook beside your bed to help to put an end to some of the thinking that you're doing at night, and also questioning, who's more powerful, them or me, and then who has control, and what can I learn?
Because, for example, if you interact with people who get angry, they can appear to be very powerful. That anger is a weakness, right? And I remember somebody who was quite angry in their nature, and I remember thinking to myself one day, I can manipulate them, I found it. I could say something and make them angry. I could say something and make them happy. I didn't do it because I didn't want to do that, but I could see how it wasn't a strength. And yet people would get so scared if somebody was angry. That actually being calm is much stronger and much more powerful. And I remember a phrase somebody said to me at one point, if you get angry, all you're doing is saying to the world, you're a fool. So, all these strong, you're a fool. So all these strong emotions actually means that I'm not the master of myself, and I can easily be influenced, and then my mind goes on a roller coaster. My emotions go on a roller coaster. Somebody says what I like and I feel great. Somebody says what I don't like and I go down. So we need to be able to active in that, don't we?
Yes, and I think as well, one of the questions, all the stimulus that we take from outside, but how much should we be controlling a little bit more about what we're watching in the news, what we're exposing ourselves to social media, which can allow us to latch on to subjects that allow us into.
Yeah,
where faith can take us off down paths.
Absolutely, and these devices are very hypnotic. We had somebody at our centre recently in London who's an expert in digital detox, and he was saying to us, you look for that blue tick on the WhatsApp. Don't be addicted to your blue ticks. But it becomes like an addiction. And sometimes I know I do it too. I go to the phone to do something, and then I start looking at something, and then I say, that's not what I need to do. So I stop myself. I'm able to go back to what it is I wanted to do. And I try to have a habit. I haven't got my phone with me now. I left it where I was staying. You've got your phone. I'm not saying it's wrong. Of course we all use, But the important thing is, all these facilities, do I use them or do they use me? That's the key. And so yes, to be very careful about what we take in. And, if you keep watching things that are very negative and violent, it's going to stick in your mind and it's going to influence you. I do look at the news and I do feel that's very important because I need to know what's happening in the world. I need to know, to think about in the work that I'm doing, what can I do that can give some support or different perspective to a situation. am often in touch with people who are in war zones, for example. So I need to understand what's happening. Otherwise I'll say, oh, just meditate, you'll be fine. Well, that's really insulting. So you really need to understand people's situations so that you can help appropriately to support them. So to understand and to learn is important. But if I keep scrolling and, just can't stop myself, that's where the danger comes.
Thank you. I believe one of the main tenets of the Brahma Kumaris is only if I change, the world changes. I mean, how can we change? What does that mean?
Okay, what does it mean to change? In essence, to change means to begin to know who I am. Now, I'm talking about all the influences, and how it creates and stimulates certain thinking. And the problem is that actually, part of the root of it is that I over-identify with the situations and over-identify with the relationships. So, for example, I may be a mother, a father. I'll just give an example of parent. Actually, no, let me give an example that's close to home for me, because I haven't got children, although I feel I have a sort of parental role in many ways. But say I'm a sister, okay? Now my sister was visiting me recently, and if I over-invest in the identity of that relationship, I won't be able to separate myself from her emotions. So when you're relating to someone, if your emotions mix or interfere with their emotions, you really get affected, and then you cannot support them. Now, you want to support someone, but if I'm only as worried as they are, one of our elder sisters, she was in a gathering and she was speaking, very lively kind of person. She actually left us in 2020 at the age of 104. So, and at 103, she travelled in 3 continents. So, she was a very powerful woman, and in fact, the heads of our organisation are women. Of course, men and women, of course, are part of everything. But she was in a gathering, and there was a woman in the room in the corner who was really unhappy. And finally, this elder was talking, and finally she burst out. She said, "What right have you to be so happy when I'm so miserable?" And Dali, called Dadi, elder sister, she just paused and she looked at the lady and she said, "Well, if I also become unhappy, who would there be to bring you happiness?" And it just turned that lady around. Amazing. But you see the principle, we over-identify, then we overthink. We over-identify with the roles we play, with our profession, with our relationships. So to begin to change means to understand that I'm something more than all the roles that I play, and that I have an inner identity. So there's all the external identities, call them labels if you like, whether it's gender, ethnicity, profession. These are all things, how people label you and see you, right? And then they have an imagination in their heads of what you must be like, right? But you as a person, you're more than that. You're an inner being, a spiritual being. And our original state of being is peace. Actually, several qualities within: peace, love, happiness, strength, wisdom. And all of this makes up our inner goodness that we have forgotten about or suppressed. Now, the more we allow that to emerge, we begin to change. Our attitude changes, our vision changes, then consequently our thoughts change, our words change, and our actions change. And then as I change, it means with these good feelings inside, I'm getting good feelings into the atmosphere. And those vibrations influence others. And so we begin to change the world around us. And you will notice, according to your state of mind, often the world seems like that. Right? So as we begin to change, the atmosphere changes, and we're doing our bit towards making the world a better place. And the decisions we'll take will contribute towards making the world a better place, because they won't just be decisions to serve me in a selfish way. I want to do what's good for everyone. So in this way, we can begin to change.
Well, that's great. It's covered a lot of questions I have here.
I'm speaking too long.
Yes, how our inner world can affect the outer world. And I mean, that's a really, really powerful thing. I mean, it's, in a way, it's quite scary as well. It means we have to be a lot more careful about what we're thinking, where we allow our thoughts to go.
Exactly, because actually our thoughts aren't hidden. I mean, if somebody's very unhappy, they may not say anything, but you feel it. Thoughts are not hidden. And you know, somebody says something to you, oh, I like you very much, but you can see that I really don't like you, they don't like you at all. You know, whatever. You feel it, right? So, you know, thoughts are not hidden. And it's very important that my thoughts are as good and positive as possible and as powerful as possible, because our thoughts have an impact.
Isn't I can see that as well would impact, you know, how maybe what we're thinking or what we believe, how that's going to be tied into the environment and what's actually happening outside. I mean, can we affect really what's happening in an environmental way, or the impact of those wars? You know, what is that in us that is making those things in existence?
Well, you know, so the whole thing about violence and war, and one of our teachings which really touched me deeply was that was about the root of violence, and that the root of violence is the first violence that we do to ourselves to suppress our inner goodness. So the qualities we have, we suppress it because we get influenced. Now, when you suppress that real identity, when it's alive in you, you feel contented. You have self-dignity. You have self-respect. You value yourself. Now, when that is suppressed inside, there's a vacuum, and that's where the ego takes over and looks for a sense of self in terms of what's happening, you know, what I do externally and how others respond to me. I'm actually trying to define myself by other people's responses to me, which, you know, isn't the right thing, is it? And so there's a vacuum. Now, so I project this image of myself. Now somebody insults me, what happens? You've seen it, maybe for yourself, maybe in others. People get defensive, right? Then they get angry, even violent. There was a study in prison, the Isle of Wight, by a psychiatrist, and there was a high rate of violence in the prison. And when he did his research, he found that the reason for violence was disrespect. He dissed me, so it was by. He worked with the men on their self-respect, and the violence went right down. But you extrapolate that, and it leads to war. A lack of love for the self, a lack of understanding of the self, a lack of value for the self. Take it all the way down the line. My territory, my resources, I have to control, you have to have my idea. We all know the story. But it's because we have forgotten who we are. And in terms of the environment, nature, it's as if nature is in a revolt against us, almost. Earthquakes, of course, very recently in Venezuela, drought, high temperatures. In India, last month, 90% of the hottest cities in the world were in India. India was experiencing severe heat and drought as a result. But what's going on? What is in human consciousness? Generally, there isn't peace. There's upheaval, there's anger, there's fear. And fear is a very big thing today. And so all of those vibrations of 8 billion people now, 8 billion beings, are having a direct impact on nature. But also, how we live, if we do not live with respect for nature, then we are going to exploit nature, and this is exactly what we have been doing. So we have a direct impact on the natural world.
Yes, and now we're thinking and respecting the earth. And just also to ask about for the power of our thoughts, whether collective meditation, whether that is, does it affect the frequency of the earth? Everybody was speaking, it sounds like yes, it definitely does. And what is frequency in this context?
Frequency is really the rate of vibration or the quality of vibration. And so if my thoughts are very elevated, that is, I'm thinking good of others, or even if somebody is negative, I'm remembering that they have goodness inside like I do. I'm remembering that they are valuable human beings. No matter how they're behaving, they're still valuable. They're still part of my human family, for example. So when I have those elevated thoughts, the frequency is high or refined, and it can have a bigger impact. When there's very, in a sense, negative or gross thoughts, anger, hatred, fear, and I remember Daddy used to say, our elder sister, sometimes you're angry at somebody and you can't express it, but it comes out in your dreams. And so in your dreams you're... So all these that's a lower frequency, and it has, and it's very strong at the moment, and it has a very negative impact, and that's why we need to refine what's going on inside of us so that we can become the master of the self, or a self-sovereign, and then we can actually choose to think in a way that's more elevated, which will have a higher frequency that can have a very powerful impact. But also I say that we, in a sense, we find each other through frequency, and so we feel connected to certain people. We actually say they're on my wavelength,
And what sort of practice can we do to help sort of have this sense of controlling or being in charge of our thoughts? What kind of things should we be doing?
I think the first thing is not to battle with your thoughts. I may have lots of worries, and I think, I shouldn't be thinking like this, why am I thinking like that? And actually you're giving more energy to those thoughts, so they become stronger. So don't have a battle with your mind. Be very kind, lovely mind. And actually say, well, rather than battling, it's a bit like if a child starts to play with some things that could be dangerous, matches or whatever, then you take that away, you give the child something more interesting to play with that's safe. So don't battle with your mind, but start to create good thoughts. Like we said at the beginning, my original state is peace. Now that really counteracts thoughts of peacelessness. My original state is love. That counteracts the thoughts of fear, actually. The antithesis of fear is love. So begin to think in a different way about people, about yourself, and then the negative thoughts will naturally lose their power. And that's what we do in meditation, and we practice this in the morning, in the evening, at times during the day. We have a practice called traffic control, which is controlling the traffic here. And so we stop. If you're at one of our centres, music will play every hour, and everybody stops what they're doing and has that traffic control. And it really helps the other 59 minutes of the hour. So it's practice. At first you'll do it, and it'll go. You do it, it'll go, never mind. Just keep practicing, keep trying, and then it will become something natural.
Oh, I love that. I have an app that I've downloaded on my phone. There's a mindfulness bell that rings however often you want it, but say an hour or 50 minutes, and that just allows me to do this traffic control.
Great.
I just stop and observe.
And that's a good use of technology. It's serving you.
I'm carrying my phone.
Oh, that's okay, I'm not saying it.
Thank you. I think we could call this kind of work activism, isn't it? It's quite, it feels that it's really empowering. You can master yourself to such a degree and be able to discern a lot more about what you're thinking. I'm not going to think about that, or ways that we can actually make decisions quickly and put them aside. And that is very empowering. And yes, I'll just add a bit more about why that we can generate such good frequencies that emanates out. If there was a micro habit that someone could do to change their thoughts today, to start healing the earth and this beautiful place that we live, what sort of little habit might we do? And we can really have a reminder, a regular reminder to observe what our thoughts are doing. Is there anything, other great nuggets we can take on board to help?
And the way, there's a few things, but one thing we talk about is about putting a full stop. And, it's the analogy that when you're writing, well, now it's typing, isn't it? We were just talking on the way up how children are maybe forgetting how to write, and but you put a full stop at the end of the sentence, then you can't add to the sentence anymore. And so that thought, no, stop. That's empowering. But the other thing is, we're going to have little practice, won't we? The other thing is our vision. Like I was saying earlier, when I see someone and I see the external form, then I begin to make all sorts of judgments about that person. But can I look at them and remember that they're not that external form? They are a being inside. And that's the real person. You could call it consciousness or soul or whatever. But behind those eyes is a being that's alive and is absolutely emitting thoughts and everything. But also, that being has original goodness. So I just thought, bold experiment. If you want to look at the person next to you, and look into their eyes, just for a few seconds or half a minute, and don't think about who they are and what they must be like because they are this age or they are this background or whatever, but just see the goodness within them. Look at them differently. Want to do that? You try? Well done. Good you go when the Rose and I do? Without a see and I have to do it.
Without that, just saying that again. She's a future. She seats.
Did you see them? See the lovely being in there? Did you see? I saw a very lovely being.
Me too. In fact, you were changing to look very childlike as well, so it was all sleeping pieces. So, yeah, well, from all ages, it's great.
I'm not a magician. But, let me see something differently, think differently about it. Little habits. I've always thought, oh, this person will never change. Just think about them. If they will change, how would they be? It's a very good method. And it's entertaining for you. At least it stops you from being negative. It'll just have an impact.
Thank you. Just another question maybe before we open up to the audience here, and just if anybody's got any questions, if you'd like to put in something in the next few moments. But I was going to ask you, what kind of shift of consciousness does humanity, what do we need now? What needs to happen now?
Right now, we need to respect ourselves, respect others, respect the earth, and put aside our selfish needs for the good of every man. In essence, some would say that. But there's such a consciousness of what I need and how others should fulfill that need. But what, instead of taking, if I can be the one who's giving? Just imagine what the world would be like if everybody thought about giving rather than taking. And not, one is the physical taking, but we want to take regard, respect, love. And what if I thought, no, before I expect it from another, let me give it. And, when we give out something positive, it always comes back to us.
Oh, that's an easy solution, isn't it?
And suddenly, tomorrow, it will be beautiful.
It's going to be a lot brighter around here anyway.
But when you think about Mother Nature and nature's abundance, we're exploiting nature terribly. And yet nature still gives to us. And we can't match that, It's just amazing where we're at, but we can do something about it, and we must do it.
Thank you. As to open it up to the floor, if anybody's got any questions for Maureen. I'll dash about with the microphone. I think we can hear each other fine.
Question?
No party questions. We're covering quick ground then, but
Have you not get a bit self-righteous if you think you are gigging? Oh, you know, the people you depend on you can be put in a place where you perhaps don't really want to be, but other people know you're capable of setting something up. And then you've got to keep that in focus with who you really are.
That's a very good question. You heard the question, can others take advantage of you, become dependent on you if you keep giving, and then you've set up something and you have to keep on it and you have to keep the balance of who you are. You see, in this giving, we're giving from what's within us. We may be giving in a physical sense, but it must be supported by a state of self-dignity, so that then others don't take in advantage, but actually others are then empowered. I always remember the situation. It was when there was an earthquake in Bhuj area in India. It's now 2006 or something, quite a while ago. And we have our headquarters is in Mount Abu, Rajasthan, so we weren't that far from the earthquake area. And our brothers and sisters, we have a hospital there. So they'd gone out to help and give supplies and everything. And I was there in Mount Abu when some of them came back and they were sharing their experiences. And, they were they didn't just go with food, they took stoves and, trying to give people the means to cook and everything. And one doctor said, somebody said to them, when you people come to me, we don't feel like we come to us. We don't feel like we lose our dignity. It's very interesting. And I thought about it because, you've got everything one day and then the next day you have to ask for a plate of food. It's very difficult. If you're giving, if I think, oh, poor person, pity, it's like a handout. Okay, I give. Of course, good to give, but how do you make the other person feel? But if I think this is my family, my human family, and if you have a brother or sister in need, it wouldn't be pity. You would say, well, I'm just sharing. Because you're in need, I share. So because they've gone with that attitude of seeing each as their brother and sister, they felt dignified, those who were receiving too. So in whatever I'm doing, if the consciousness is right, in other words, if I'm not doing it because I want anyone to acknowledge, I'm doing it with humility, I'm not doing it with ego, and I'm doing it out of a pure intention. And whether somebody acknowledges or not, well, I've done what I need to do, fulfill my conscience. Then others won't take advantage of me. So it's this mechanism, of what's going on inside. And often people give in a physical sense, but there are other motives behind it. I remember many years ago at a UN conference, somebody described international aid as a blood transfusion going in the wrong direction. I've never forgotten that. And it was when I was at COP in Glasgow, of course a lot comes up at the COP, the climate change conferences, about climate finance and the injustice, how the rich countries, of course, the ecological devastation, and yet it's the poorer countries that pay the price, even though they haven't contributed hardly anything to the environmental situation. And of course, the richer countries are meant to give finance for loss and damage and so on, adaptation. And I was quite new to the whole thing then. I didn't know everything. And I was on a panel, and then there was somebody who was an expert in finance. And then as he was speaking, he was saying that the finance that comes to the poorer countries comes not as a grant, but as a loan. And because they are high-risk countries, because their economy is not that stable, the interest rates on the loans are high. I was shocked out of my wits at that. I didn't stop talking about it for 10 years. I couldn't believe it. You have caused this devastation, but instead of giving, you're actually taking and continuing to take. And so what consciousness is that? I really was shocked. So yes, there's a lot that needs to be. I've forgotten what the original question was now. There's a lot needs to change.
So what gives you most hope for the future, the future of the earth?
Well, it's when I'm with people, particularly the NGOs, and particularly the young people who are doing something. And actually, renewables are quite unstoppable. I was with Mary Robinson, I don't mean to name drop, but it was quite funny that it was part of these consultations. And the Brazilian government at this COP conference, the last one, they did what's called a global ethical stocktake. First time that's been done, you would know about it. Anyway, she said, because renewables are really advancing, very, I don't know if it's, I don't have the figures in my head, there was much more, you may have figures. But she said, and she's now in her 80s, we're very active. She said, well, if in 50 years we're not entirely on renewable energy, I'm coming back to haunt you. So things are happening, but what gets publicised is all the negative things. The good things that are happening don't get the same publicity. And if they got publicity, people would have quite a different mindset about what's happening. So there are many good things happening. There are still many bad things happening, negative things. But there is a groundswell. Now, I think this is happening with human consciousness too. People are waking up, that realizing that we can't go on in the same way of being as we have been. And it's like we talk about tipping point in terms of the environment. There is a tipping point of consciousness too, which will have then begin a wave where there will be a big impact of change in the world. So that's what I really feel is going to happen. But at the moment we see it's like the ascending frequencies, the descending frequencies, and the descending energies seem very strong, but the ascending energies are building up. So that gives me a lot of hope. But when you see, especially when you see a lot of our young people who are so, they're frustrated on the one hand, but they also know many know how to work for a better future, and they're really dedicating themselves to that. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Is there another question?
I'm wondering, a lot of the things that you might be asking us to banish from, our internal world, aren't a lot of those things, the things that, create a lot of good in the world, even like the paintings that are surrounding us, whatever. And there's so many aspects, art, music, they come from a kind of real mix of emotions. So the ones that you might consider negative, there might be anger in there, all sorts of things. So, what would you say? Would you kind of cordon off those emotions that have created them, or because you, like I said, you kind of, if you were to banish a lot of those emotions, it's many of these artists that, or even in other areas, like it creates, there's a lot of, it's a real force of will that equals a billion or whatever. So it's like, I'm just wondering.
No, it's a very good question. I wouldn't use the word banish, but rather transform. That's what I would be suggesting. But I think that creative energy, I agree, it can have all different aspects to it. But I think that it's a different kind of creativity when you begin to transform those aspects and change our relationship with negativity. So it would be an interesting experiment to see. And in fact, I know one artist, she's actually passed on now, and when she started meditating and shifting her way of being, her art changed very much. And I've seen some of her former paintings on some of the paintings now. And I just feel that the paintings afterwards really had a lot more beauty. So yes, it's a mixture, and it's an ongoing process. So I'm not saying that, now because somebody might have been angry, discard that. No, things of beauty that are created and expressed, then they have good impact. And well, look at this. I don't know what was behind the artist who created these paintings, but I keep looking at this painting and I'm facing it. But the movement and the joy and the beauty in it is amazing. So silence, And it's a process, because it's not that suddenly everybody's going to become positive. It's gradual. It's a transition. We're in a time of transition.
Tori, I just had the one question following on from some things that have been said. If your natural nature is not that way and kind, to constantly try to be thinking, banishing bad energy and trying to get good energy, that can be quite stressful. You put yourself under quite a lot of pressure all the time. So there must be somehow that you've got to let that off somewhere. That either the build up of that cushions, find this root somewhere.
And again, this word banishing.
What's it banishing?
It's transformation.
Yeah.
The transformation, and you have to do it with a lot of self-kindness. As I say, don't battle with yourself, battle with your mind.
Mm.
And if it's causing pressure, then you need to take a step back and try to do things in a different way. Because really this process of transformation or transition doesn't need to cause pressure. In fact, if it is to really be transformative, it would be very uplifting and filled with love. And this is where part of the transition or transformation, that can often seem hard, is about learning to love ourselves. And I think where it feels the pressure is where I haven't yet got to that point where I love myself and value myself enough. So maybe that's the direction to go in, to release the pressure.
Yeah, and just that's another question, easy. Yes, animals come into our life an awful lot. What we, believe is their place in the world, and how we connect with animals. And people seem to be able to give this love to an animal that no way can they match, to a human being. Yeah, and it's a huge thing. And I think it's getting stronger in people. The more people feel let down by another human being. It should be encouraged. It should be help people to take that little further out. Not just their animal, other people's animals, perhaps the person then of the lead as well. You know, it's quite a big thing for me and other people.
It's a very, very interesting question. You know, we're part of an ecosystem with the animals, birds, all the creatures, all the living beings. I mean, we know that without the whole ecosystem working together, we wouldn't be able to have food to eat, air to breathe, etc., etc. And we are destroying, but we are happy to do things differently, of course. So it is quite natural for us to love the natural world and to love animals. And that's important, so that again you don't come into that attitude of exploitation. But I think also what you're talking about too is this thing that because people have become so disappointed and human relationships are not fulfilling in general, of course it's this generalization, and people are putting their, you know, they're getting more comfort from animals. But I think that that can become a dependency, and we need to look for things and relationships that can strengthen us, not weaken us. This is where the process of inner transformation can begin to strengthen us, so that we're not so dependent on the external to feel that sense of inner comfort. And so this is where, as we meditate and we get more in touch with our inner goodness, we feel our own self-value and self-dignity, independent of how others treat us. And that's really a position of strength. And of course, it takes time to cultivate that, it's not cultivated in 5 minutes. But also the other aspect of meditation, which you may or may not relate to, is, of course, taking strength from a higher power, from a higher source, whether you say higher consciousness, the divine, God. But when we meditate, we also connect with that source of strength, source of love, source of peace. And this is a whole other dimension that can really provide us with a lot of inner healing and bring us back to wholeness. And again, people have moved away. You know, people say, I don't want anything to do, if you say the word God, it means religion. Religion is God's wars, etc., etc. But every religion has its heart piece, actually. Every religious teaching. And again, just I remember what the sister said once, and always say with me, she said, God would not give us power to fight one another. God gives us power for peace. True religion means peace. And so it's very important that we can gain that inner strength, so that we're not so dependent. But thank you. Very, very good question.
Okay, is there anybody else to get to? That's not finished.
Yes, on that. What being this of a book should be about it is in presumably an electric mechanism. Book a couple of sites. The regulators to game pieces of it. Like the squeeze back there. Lot in fact the book you regulate self rock. But that's because he's pushed or it's on a midway. Apparently this happened. You did 40s.
And it's actually a very important dimension in understanding human functioning. And someone who's part of our organisation, she just retired as a consultant psychiatrist. But at one point, in the Royal College of Psychiatrists, who are some you should know, there's special interest groups, and there's a special interest group on spirituality, and she was the chair of that at one point. And so I think people need, they need to look for others who are working in that way, because they are there. And I was actually on an intimate panel that she organised, and it was about the role of God in psychiatry. It was the role of belief and faith. And it was very interesting, very revealing. People were giving case studies and everything. And they found that if somebody has a strong belief, if the psychiatrist acknowledges that or works with that, it can really help in the healing of the patient, rather than just saying, well, that's not part of psychiatry, so even if it's in real life, I'm not putting it to one side, but it's part of the person in front of them. So, yes, it's a very interesting dimension. And the spiritual dimension, there's also, sometimes it can be unclear whether a person really is having the psychiatric episode or a spiritual crisis, and that's something else that needs careful understanding. So, it's very important, but it's a very important dimension.
Anybody else?
I just wondering about you mentioning about meditation, how much of the divine meditation of the backhand meditation is it? How much of that say is meant to be kind of held on to the rest of the day or part of the week life? Because in the West, it's actually like you see to dip into meditation and then you go back to I don't know you see it or maybe it's East versus West. I'm sure maybe you've seen at the dinner groups and maybe and it's
but we tend to keep the same verbiages of us, our practice, and definitely it's a practice that's for life. It's a way of life. It's not just something to do in the morning and forget and get angry and whatever. But what's the point of doing it? You may as well just back it up, gobbling, and that's it. So it's very important that it carries on into your life. And that's why we have that traffic control. That's why you continue to pay attention to how we're functioning, how we're thinking, how we're feeling, and to develop that practice so that we can respond more naturally in a positive way to situations and influences and challenges that definitely come to us daily. And so it is a way of life, and it's very important that we begin to, as you meditate more, you begin to understand what is causing, what of your own nature and thinking is causing you distress, and what it is you need to change. And so it's a constant process. That's our transformation in the brain. But it's definitely for life. It's not for, once a week or once a day.
There are questions for sometimes.
Vi just det say morning routine does it actually help in your mindfulness about the day? You can that.
Yeah, definitely. I 100%. If first thing in the morning you're filling your mind with good thoughts, it's like you're setting your mind on a track. And okay, you may lose the way in between, but at least you started on the right track. You have those good feelings, so then you can bring your way back. But back to that, because you have that experience. But if you just get up, grab a cup of coffee, rush out in the morning, and your mind is all over the place, you will never get your mind back the whole day. It'll take a lot of effort. So yeah, very, very important to first set your mind. Yeah. And at night, just closing the chapter of the day, or the moments, and as I say before, or the essence, and then you could sleep more.
Look, there's more questions, and I'm going to stop it. Meditation, maybe we do some finish off more reading, just even video set up. Have a judicial abuse at the proof. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that's only 4 feet on the floor with comfortable. Take a deep breath. And exactly to help keep that consciousness in life, we usually meditate with our eyes open. And not not to keep them, stressfully. But if you feel it's more comfortable to close your eyes, of course, that's fine. So take time to be present here with myself. Gently, I let go of the thoughts of the past, like the thoughts of the future. And I turn my thoughts inwards, towards my inner world. The inner world of my thoughts and feelings. And I wish to make my inner world strong, so that it is independent of the influences of the outer world. And so I ask myself the question, who am I? Who is the being within that is generating these thoughts? So I separate from all the external labels to experience the inner being that I am. And the being of energy, consciousness, or spiritual energy. And I'm a being of light. And I begin to experience the original qualities of my being. I dive deep beneath all the layers of emotions to my original state within. And I discover what treasures within. and breathe the please. This is a peace that no one, nothing can take away. It is part of me. Peace that makes me still inside. I am being of peace. Yes, peace. Yes, love. Now loving me. Love is my true nature. Love for myself. Love that I feel me be. Love for nature. This is the alien love within me. Not having wisdom. Wisdom that guides me. Knowledge, wizardness, into our world. And I need to strengthen these qualities within. In my say to peace. There's a pure thought, and I can connect with a high source, a high being, an unlimited source of peace, an unlimited source of love. That divine peace and divine love gives me strength. It is a healing power. I fill myself with this. And love, and peace, and the love that overflow to our Lord. Makes the atmosphere to create a loving atmosphere to grow fear. Very goodness. Let me always remember watching you, being at peace, love. Make it so. And let me express these qualities. Remember, Let them be my eyes. So that I give the world rather than take. So that I become strong in my own self-dignity. And I value myself. I value others. And uphold their dignity too. So return to the awareness of the room where I am. Keeping these qualities alive in my awareness. Thank you. Thank you. That was resolving.
Morning, Sotu. Thank you, and also for your wisdom, your time. She does see day. And there's made us of what's possible. Then we get to our true selves. Sort of a slow down back isn't about having just not too many thoughts and also an invitation. Just pause and connect. Look for the peace that already exists in us. Have to look around, but I'm at nature is not anxiety, but that's what the meditation or become search path for many years. Last day's conversation was a simple meditation. Just take a moment, sit back from the noise and daily thoughts with kindness, and reconnect with the quiet wisdom of your inner being. As the Brahma Kumaris often reminds us, when we change the quality of our flaws, we change the qualities of our consciousness. And if consciousness changes, our relationship, our communities, our to be one begins to change. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. If there's resonated with you, please share with someone who may be carrying a busy mind or a heavy heart. And until next time we move through life with a peaceful mind and open hearts and the quiet confidence that everything we truly need begins from within. Thank you so much. I know I would like to say a few friendship words before we close.
Well, I would like to thank Rose as well for such in-depth questions, and I think it was a very rich conversation, wasn't it? Almost too rich, too much to digest. But then we had the experience of the silence, and I think that's something all of us really, once they've tasted it, we want to return to it. So anyway, in Kirkcudbright on Thursday evening, there's some of these cards on the piano there. And this is at Nolan Studio, Nolan Street. And then there will be this month, starting this coming Tuesday, a lunchtime meditation, just half an hour at the Johnson Centre. So if anyone feels like joining with that, it's half an hour in your day if you're working in town or are in town, then you're very welcome to just drop in. And it'll be from 12:15, well, let's say 12, and we start at 12:15 till 12:45. So there are these leaflets as well on the piano and a few at the entrance as well. But it's our tradition to always, at the end of a session, is to give you a few thoughts written down that you can take away and use immediately in your life. And also that's something to sweeten the mind and also a physical sweet. And as far as I know, they're vegan. Yeah, in case anyone has any dietary restrictions. So thank you all for joining us this evening. And I hope you've tasted a little bit of that inner peace, that inner silence. So attract you back to it again and again.
Thank you. Maureen Goodman, everyone.